Now we are working on the third part of our birding journal, and it's just the third video in this series. So we've done the outside of this journal to this point, and then now we're going to flip it to the inside, and we'll be working on the inside a little bit. So the first thing that we're going to do is to add some more William Morris papers. So I have these beautiful William Morris papers that are in green, and I've printed like 3 of them so I can cover the whole inside, what I need to cover. And I'll probably be adding more down the road of this same print. But I do think this is beautiful, and I think the color is just perfect. So I'm just trimming these edges off, and then we'll just start laying these papers down. So these papers are from the Junk Turtle Studio, from Etsy, and they're digital papers. And she has 3, at least when I bought it, she had 3 William Morris paper sets, and one was in green, one was in blue, and one was in pink. And I got all 3, and I really love, maybe the blue one might actually be my favorite, but these green papers, there's a lot of really nice ones here, and I feel like this is a nice, beautiful medium color green. So I'm just going to cut some pieces that would be big enough to cover this spine area. So how we're going to bind this journal is going to be like a traveler's notebook style. So we're going to have eyelets and then elastics in this binding area. So I'm using, I've already covered it with like different layers of cardboard and paper on the outside. Now we're going to do some more paper on the inside. But with each layer that I'm gluing, I kind of like it because it's going to add to the strength of those eyelets. So every layer that I glue, I feel like the eyelets are going to be like more sturdy, and that will work out really well. So I'm really excited about this. So here I'm just gluing this down. You can see I'm gluing it kind of heavily. But this whole consistency of this journal is going to be almost like a hardcover book. So I'm not trying to keep it like flexible, this spine area at all. This is more like a hardcover book. But I do want to add some interest to this area, because if we were just going to, let's say, sew this in, then you might not see the binding as much. But since it's going to be elastics and the eyelets, and planning on moving pages in and out, I do want to have this binding be really interesting, so that you know, when you see it, it kind of keeps that idea of like an old book and an illuminated book, one that we're going to be adding to. I'm going to have this journal, you know, I intend for quite a while, and like a permanent journal. And I just have the idea of, you know, as this is an illuminated journal, I just, like as it sits on the shelf, I just want it to be something that looks like almost like a treasure book, where people want to grab it and take it off the shelf and look at it. So I'm going to be, you know, putting pages in here, and then sketching birds and just making different notes about birds. But I do think that's kind of a perfect topic to be doing things that are really beautiful and stylized, and adding, you know, jewel tones and different jewels to it. I just think this is a perfect thing to do for a birding journal. So here I'm just adding more papers to the inside and gluing them down relatively heavily. Now down the road, I do intend to add pockets to this, and on the back here I think I'm going to add a flap so it kind of covers the pages when this journal closes. And I will do that flap in these same papers. And then the pockets, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to make that decision when the time comes. But I just do want to have like a nice pocket in the back, because I have like a birding book that is like a 1/2 inch thick. So I want to add that to the back, in the back pocket. And I'm doing that just because then it kind of stays out of my way until I need it. So I thought about putting it in the front cover, but the truth is I just like wanted to stay in the back, put away until it's something that I want to take out. So I'm not really matching up these prints too well, just keeping this pretty, you know, like a collage, since I know I'll be covering this with some pockets. But I have to kind of think of the steps, like in which order, because I want to have like a closure on this journal and do different things. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing this in the correct order so that like at the time we add like, metal corners and different things, that everything else that I need to have done before that is already done. So if you do want to work on a journal like this, it's really fun. It's just a cereal box, and you'll see that in the first video. So it's not anything that you're putting lots of money into or anything like that. So it's just a fun project that, if it doesn't work out, you can just keep going and like covering it up. So that would be perfect. But it is, the base of it is just a cereal box, and these are digital papers that I've just printed out. So, the materials are not anything that's too expensive or too precious or anything like that. But I think by the time that we're done with this cover and then some of the inside pages, I think this is just going to look, like I said, like a treasure book. So I'm really excited about this and just having fun with it too. So this is a different William Morris print. This is another one from that green collection. And it's a little shorter than the binding, so I'm just going to cut 2 pieces and then just collage those together on this binding area. But I like the fact that now we're adding a much darker green. And it's wider than the binding, so I think that's kind of nice. It will like fold over the edge, but it also helps me not to have that binding area just super precise. So this kind of folds a little bit over, and I don't know if you have ever seen, we used to get like, when I was a kid, get like the Reader's Digest books and all of that, but I just always was so excited to get those, like different encyclopedias and things like that. But they had this beautiful like gilding on the outside, and on the inside all these interesting like inner book cover papers, and the bindings were really beautiful. So I just remember being so inspired by that when I was little. I would just sit there and just like read these books. So kind of those memories is also what I'm trying to bring into this book. And I already have other ideas for other books as well, because I'm just having fun, with the idea of this. So I've added the papers. I added the papers to the binding, and now I am adding a whole layer of wax paper. So I'm just kind of haphazardly adding this wax paper. But one thing to note is that when you overlap it, like see right here, I had a little area I needed to cover. When you overlap this, you will see that overlap. So if you do want to have it be, like I would say, more perfect, then you would want to cut those areas to fit before you lay this down. So since I knew I was going to have other things covering up these areas, then I was fine like layering the wax paper. But just so you're aware of that, when you do the wax paper and you layer it, you're going to be able to see that you maybe have 2 layers there. You can actually see that after it's dry. So at this point, I'm just using a gel medium. This is actually a Prima gel medium. And I let that dry, and you can see when it's wet, it's very wrinkled. When it dries, it's much smoother. I wouldn't say it's 100% smooth, but it is much smoother and has a really nice texture to it. And I really like it. So this is kind of new for me to add like this much wax paper to the surface of the inside of the book. But I thought I would like it, and I really do. I think it kind of knocks the colors back a little bit, but it gives it such a nice vintage feel. And like I said, the texture of it is super nice. So I'm just trimming this wax paper around the edges here. I'm trying to trim it as, carefully as I can. But if you get to this point, like I had to go around and almost like glue those edges shut. And I did it once and then let it dry, and then I went ahead and did it a second time just to make sure these edges are nice and sealed, I would say. Front and back kind of sealed to each other, and then that you have it trimmed the way that you want it. You could probably also use like a straight edge and just rip it. The only thing is if you rip it, you are definitely going to get a more raggedy edge than just going ahead and cutting it. And again, we're on the inside of this journal. It almost looks like the outside of a journal, but it's actually the inside of the journal. And the other side has like roses and different things, but this inside is more plain at the moment. So here I'm going to add archival ink to this binding area. And I'm just doing it kind of in a, a brighter green, I would say. Just trying to add a little bit of interest to this binding area. And I do want to give it the feel of like an old, treasured book. So that green was a nice archival green, and I'm going to go back in and add a few different shades of green. With some distress inks. And I'm just going to kind of model that with a piece of paper towel. And then since I've used some distress inks, I'm going to add like a layer of that gel medium just to seal that in, because distress inks are not waterproof. They're like water reactive. So I'm just going to go ahead and model this a little bit, but that way we've got it sealed in with our gel medium. So I let that dry, and you can see that wax paper just kind of evens out. I just love it. It has such a great look to it. So now I'm going to take some green metallic paint. And this, is a permanent paint. So once we add this on and then it dries, it'll be a permanent paint. So I don't have to worry about anything getting mixed up with water or anything. So I'm just adding this layer with with my finger and just getting that all the way around. And it just serves to kind of seal those edges even further and then give us a nice frame. So we'll be doing this a few more times with different things to kind of give us a really nice border to this journal. So this is like a first layer. So as I said, this is like a green metallic. So in person, it looks really pretty. So I've just gone all the way around those edges, and I'm letting that dry. But I do think it gives it a nice look. And that was just on the inside. I did not do that on the outside. Okay, so now we're going to be adding some stamping to this binding area. And I have black VersaFine ink here. And that dries pretty quickly. But I feel like that's a good choice over the wax paper and over gel medium. I feel like that will hold up really well. And I have this stamp from Tim Holtz. It's just almost like a flourish stamp. I'm just going to use that to kind of randomly stamp in this binding area. But I feel like these layers kind of give it a great look. And again, almost like an earthy look, and I feel like that's kind of a fun thing that I'm doing on this journal, is just to make everything look almost like moss covered, but just make it look like it's old and well worn, well loved. So I'm going to stamp this, just bits and pieces of this like flourish, but to somewhat cover this binding area. So I'm just kind of hitting all those different areas up and down that binding while trying not to get it in the other area. So I feel like this has the look that I wanted to have in this binding area. So I feel like once I let this dry, then I can see if I want to add anything else. But at the moment, I'm really liking how this looks. So now I'm going to be adding some seam binding for a closure. And I'm doing this at this point so that I then can add the pockets and it'll almost be like a hidden closure. So I didn't want to put anything on the front cover. So now I'm just, this journal's 10 inches tall. So at 5 inches, I'm just making like an 1.5 1.25 of pretty heavy glue. And then I'm going to take my seam binding, which is this really pretty green that kind of matches everything. And then I'm just going to straighten that out because seam binding is so wrinkly and crinkly. So I'm just going to kind of straighten that out and then glue that down. So this will give me a nice strong place that I can, tie my journal in a bow, but it's not super noticeable. So I just feel like it's a good choice for this journal. And then now I'm taking another William Morris print, and I am just going to, I'm kind of centering it on that medallion. And I'm just going to take a template that I use that I kind of came up with myself for pockets for different journals. And I think this one will work well here. So I'm just going to cut out one layer of this really pretty William Morris print, different than the other one. So this is kind of a different tone of green. And I'm just going to cut this pocket out and then I'll layer it on another piece of paper so I have like a double thickness. And then I'm going to add a couple things to this just to give it a nice thickness, but not too thick, because if I have pockets that are like cardboard or just like too stiff, it's really hard to get things in there. So I'm just trying to kind of make it the perfect weight. And you can see I still have like the black lines where I traced it, but that's okay because I'm going to go back and ink it and put paint around the edge so that will not be visible. So I like how these papers coordinate with each other. I feel like that's working out really well. So this is just another William Morris print, but this one's not going to show, so I'm just using this to layer. So that'll be not seen on the inside of the pocket. I'm just going to go ahead and cut out this second layer. And I think what really gives this the strength is the glue, because if you're gluing around the edges, it's less likely to tear. So now I'm going to put down some matte medium, and I'm just putting down a die cut. I have it's kind of a delicate flower die cut, and I did a whole bunch of these one day and then just watercolor painted them. And so I feel like this gives it a nice botanical feel. So I'm going to add this, and I've added it with matte medium, and then now I'm going to put another piece of wax paper over the top, just to keep kind of consistent with the fact that the inside of this journal has wax paper on it. So I'm just going to do this on the front cover, but I like how it turns out. It's just really interesting. Gives it a nice vintage feel. And then, the plus side is it will really protect this die cut as well. So I'm just inking archival inking and coffee around that edge. And then now I'm taking a little bit of rose gold metallic paint. And I'm just going to do a quick, edge around this pocket. I feel like it needed a little bit of metallic. And I don't mind, I'm adding, gunmetal, gold, rose gold. I'm going to do a bronzy color. So I don't mind adding all these different metallics in. I feel like that is kind of in keeping with an illuminated journal. It's just giving it a lot of different finishes, but I feel like they all go really well with each other. So I am going to have to let this dry. But I also think this helps kind of seal those edges as well. So I'm going to have to let this pocket dry really well. So while that's drying, I'm going to do my inside flap. So I'm doing an inside flap on this journal just so that if I have a lot of papers, I'm planning to have the birds painted on tags or sketched on the tags. So I'm just going to give this an extra flap just to hopefully keep things more secure and in place. So I've also added that seam binding onto the back. And I don't know if that was like a yard of each. I bought seam binding from Amazon and it's like dyed in all different colors. But basically I had a long piece and I just cut it in half so that my two sides are the same length. And now I've glued that back cover seam binding closure in as well. And then now I'm just going to add this flap here. So I've just basically doubled this piece of paper and I'm gluing this in really well. I'm going to let this dry for a minute or two. And then I'm just kind of going to fold it into like a flat shape. So once things are in the journal, this is going to kind of fold around them. And I also want to add like a pen loop to this as well. But I'm just testing this out, making sure this is all, sitting right so that the journal can close and I can tie it and everything. So that's working out really well. I'm really happy with that. So I'm going to add my inside pocket in the back cover here, and now I'm just doubling it with another print. I think I printed 3. I tend to print 3 out of the same paper, and it feels like then I'm just using enough of it so that things don't look random. They're like coordinating with each other. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this pocket. It's just like a double layer of the pocket. That way it's thick enough. And I'm just trimming this nicely, and then I will ink the edge. And I'm just going to, glue this down to the back here, and I'm going to do it in a different way. I'll show you what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to glue the one side, like the long side down. But then at the bottom, I'm just going to put like a strip of paper, and that will just give it a little bit more give, since I'm going to put a book in here. And it's going to have like that extra thickness to it. So this will give it a little bit of give, and it will also reinforce it really nicely. And then if for some reason down the road I need to like go back and reinforce this, I can always do that. But I think this will give me a nice sturdy pocket for putting my book in the back of this journal. And that was one thing I definitely wanted to do, is to put my little birding book in this journal. Because, if I'm seeing a bird, I'm looking in my book and seeing if this is something that is supposed to be in Pennsylvania. And I have looked for the different birds that I'm seeing in my yard, which is what I want to catalog. And some of those are not in my book, so I'm not totally sure what's going on there. So I'm going to have to look those up on the internet. So I've just put a strip of paper on the bottom, so that will hopefully give it a little bit of reinforcement. And then I'm just tucking this book, I'm just kind of putting it halfway into that pocket so I can still see the cover of it. But that seems like that's going to work out really well. But I love this type of pocket where it's just like, I don't even know what you call this. I kind of forget, but it's just where you can kind of slide things in diagonally. I feel like that works really well. So now this pocket is dry, so I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. And I'm just pulling it back from the edge a little bit. I'm not trying to get it right up to the edge or anything. And now I'm just doing another coat of like a bronze paint from Ranger in the Distress line. And this is a nice paint. It's almost got like an ink consistency, but it dries really quickly, and I just feel like this is a good color for the inside of the journal. So we already had that green metallic, and now I'm covering it up with this. It's almost like a brass. And I just feel like it's all working together really well. And again, I'm not doing this on the outside. I'm going to do different colors on the outside. So now I have some like sticky back, I'm going to call them jewels, but you know what I mean. They're just like, these are metallic, so they're not like a, like let's say faux diamonds or anything like that. These are like metallic. But I'm just going to add something to the edge of this binding areas so that it looks embellished. And I like the fact that I can do this in a metal. So these are just things that I bought years ago from Joann's that were on clearance. And I think it's like Jolie's Boutique. But there's a few different designs that I was able to buy. And they're nice because you can just pull them apart, or I could use my scissors and cut them apart. But that way I can get whatever lengths I need. And then here I'm just kind of skipping so I can put that design back together there. And this more ornate one I want to put in the back of this journal. So whatever different kinds of embellishments you have, you can use whatever you think looks nice. I did feel like these had a bit of a medieval feel to it. And it's like that antique-y bronze again, which I keep using, which I think is really fun in this journal. And these stick really well. Most things I have to go back and re-glue, but this brand sticks really well. So I'm just adding another little embellishment there. And then my last step for today, I'm going to add a few. I have like diamond-shaped, I guess crystals, whatever you want to call it, but like faux embellishments here. Then I'm just going to put at the base of these flowers. And I'm just going to glue these on. So again, just something, these are little embellishments I found at Tuesday Morning. And I'm able to use them here, but I think this is really pretty. So we've got another set of steps done in this journal. I'm really excited. So this is our third part of this series, and I'm going to come back and do our fourth part. And we'll be working again on the outside and adding our eyelets and elastics and different embellishments, and I think you'll be really pleased with how this will be coming along. So thank you so much for watching.